welcome back to our channel. I'm Jared from 3C's Recreation. Sorry it's been a minute since we've done any beta content, but the snow's been fantastic. We've been riding sleds every morning and every night. Unfortunately, the long-term temperatures don't look great for that, so we're ready to get right back into bike season here. We're going to do a clutch bleeding procedure and a front brake. While I was pulling the bike back here to do that, my front brake's really soft, so we'll do both. The reason why I'm doing the clutch is because when we were in Florida doing a race back in December, my clutch started to fade really bad halfway through the race, so I kind of had to quit using it and be easy on it. So not always the funnest thing to do whenever you're trying to race somebody. So this is a really cheap way to do this. You can do this at home, and I'll show you what we're going to use. It's really simple. All we have here is, I like to just use like an old water bottle, a little small piece of hose. We get these from whenever we do like brand new battery setups and the people don't need the hose. So I have this just laying around, a bunch of these. An 8mm, a Phillips screwdriver, a little pick tool, and then some brake fluid. So the first thing you always want to do is read your brake cap and make sure you have the right kind of fluid. I'm not sure if the GoPro will adjust enough to read this, but it says either 4 or 5.1. And so that's why we have the Maxima DOT4. And this is kind of where the pick tool comes in handy, is I like to clean these out. You can kind of see the sand in there from our last race, even though we've washed the bikes. You don't want to, right there, so you don't want to mess up these little Phillips screws. You want to keep your cap screws nice. So you can kind of see me plucking some sand out of there. And now that I've got it loosened up, I just like to use the air tool and just clean it out easily. That's more of a preventative maintenance thing for in the future than anything. But now that we got that cleaned out, we can just take our regular Phillips screwdriver here, make sure it's a good end on it, and we'll pop these both loose. And that'll let us see in the reservoir, and we can see how much fluid we have currently. The clutch did come back at the end of the race as I quit using it so hard, but I'm assuming the fluid looks pretty gummy. And that's why I love to use the clear hose, because as I'm draining the fluid out of here, you'll be able to see how dirty it is coming out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'll take the cap off next. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is take the cap off here. And we'll look in there and see what we have even for fluid, how clean is it. So now I got that, we'll just kind of pop it here. And there should be a seal on the inside of here. Yeah, it's super dirty in there. And then seals on the bottom of the cap, that's where it stays. So I'm gonna set this over here. And then if you look in here, I might have to get a light, but it is super gummy in there. We definitely need to flush this out. Fluid's been in there a while. So I think as we do this, you'll see a bunch of crappy fluid coming out. So now that we got the cap off, it's important to keep your handlebars straight all the time. If you turn them one way or the other too far, you'll lose some fluid. But yeah, you can see how dirty this thing is in here. I can't believe it even works at all. And I was just kind of trying to clean this little cap off, and it's not even connected on my bike. So we're gonna have to, so it's got a snap ring. We'll get this all cleaned out, get some fresh fluid in it, and then we'll reconnect the little cap there. So the next thing I'm gonna do is show you guys how to hook up the hose on the bottom here. So the inexpensive way to do this is I take a Phillips screwdriver. I've got the cap still in my water bottle. I just poke a hole right in the top of the cap there. And maybe you have to like wiggle it around a little bit. And then I'm going to take the end of my hose. I'm just going to put it right in here. And then it'll kind of hold itself. And then we've got the cap on down here in the sleeve cylinder. We're going to pop this off. I just like take it all the way off. And then I clean this up a little bit down here. And then we're going to slide the 8mm on first. And then we want to make sure we have that set so we can crack the bleeder open and then reclose it. This is all the way closed, so I need it over here. That way I can open it. And then we're going to slide our hose right on top of the bleeder screw. And it creates a nice little, it'll pretty much hold itself up. Like I don't have to do much. So what we're going to do now is to bleed the clutch. You want to squeeze the clutch up on the handlebar. Braxton, you want to squeeze that for me? Go ahead and squeeze that, keep it squeezed. So now that it's squeezed, we've got pressure through the clutch system, and now I can crack my bleeder screw here, and hopefully you can see. Yeah, look at that, look how mucky that is. So he still has that squeezed. I'm gonna go ahead and reclose this. So now that the bleeder screw is tight again, he's gonna go ahead and let up on the handlebar here, and it just sucked more fluid back down. I think what I'm gonna do right now though, before we do anything else, is I'm gonna clean all of this crappy fluid out of here, and we're gonna put fresh fluid right in the top. That way we're not sucking this, that's just gonna waste time. So we're gonna clean this out. If this was better looking fluid to begin with, you'd be fine. You can just do the same process over and over, but I don't wanna, there's no reason to suck this through there. So we're gonna clean this out real quick, and then we'll come right back. Okay, so we got my reservoir cleaned out all the way, and this is the little, what this does is it helps air bubbles from getting down in there. So if you were to tip the bike over, this kind of holds some fluid in it, so air bubble isn't getting into your clutch system. But mine was just kind of floating around in there. It's got this snap ring, so we're just gonna push it down on here and push it in. And now it's back in place like it should be. But that's funny, that one was floating around. And this is only a 2020 model year. It's not that old of a bike, so if your clutch is kind of fading, just pop this cap off and make sure your fluid doesn't look as bad as mine did in there. And also that your little cap isn't floating around in there as well. So we're gonna fill this with fresh, clean fluid now that we've got the whole master cylinder cleaned out. And that way we're only sucking clean fluid down through our clutch system. Like to do, we've done the process once. We've got one squirt of fluid to come out, and we cleaned our fluid out up here. I always like to squirt this or squeeze this a couple times. There was no air bubbles in my system. It was just really dirty. But if you had a lot of air bubbles, you would flick this a lot, and the vibrations would help pull those air bubbles back up and out, and you would see them coming out the top there. But like I said, we don't have an air bubble issue. It's just really dirty. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna keep doing this quite a while, because I want to get all of this dirty fluid out of my system. That way the next race we go to, I know I have clean fluid in this. So that's what we'll do next. Okay, go ahead and squeeze the lever up there. You got it squeezed, hold it in. There's a little air bubble there. And then go ahead and let go. Keep the handlebar straight up there. And then pump it a couple times, 1 or 2 times. Okay, now squeeze it in tight to the bar. Okay, go ahead and release it. Pump it once or twice. And then hold it in. And then keep it held in for a second. And then go ahead and release it. You can see whenever he released it, it just sucked a bunch more fluid down. And you sometimes want to release it slow. That way it's not grabbing air from the top. So we'll top the fluid back off here, and you can see I just worked that bubble back out of the cap there. You always want to keep that reservoir pretty full when you're doing this. That way you don't pull air down into the system. So we'll grab more fluid, and we're literally just going to do the same process. We're going to keep adding fluid up here. We're going to squeeze it, hold it, crack it loose until this fluid starts to look as clean as the stuff we're putting in the top. So this is going to be the clutch bleeding procedure. And when we're done, we're just going to pull this hose off, reinstall our cap, and then we're going to reinstall the cap on top. And then after that, we'll show you guys how to do the front brake as well. Very similar. So we only bled this, we only cracked the bleeder probably 7 or 8 times. You can already see how the fresh fluid is coming through. That's why I like to use this setup that I have. That way you know whenever you're getting clean fluid. If you had an air bubble, you would see it coming up and up and out of the system here. But you can see how gummy the old fluid was that was in the system. So super good that we did this, and then now we'll move to the front brake here. All right, so now we're gonna do our front brake, and as you can see, the way I have my front brake pulled back and my throttle tube pushed down, there's no room to get the cap off. So I'm gonna loosen the 2 clamps, the 2 clamp bolts that are holding the brake, and I'm also gonna rotate the throttle housing back to get that out of the way. And to do that, there's also 2 8mm bolts in the bottom of the throttle housing. So real quick, I'll pop all this loose. So on the front brake, you can see how mine's kind of going right to the bar. It's not what we want. We want like a solid little feel. This one says either DOT4 or DOT3, and I just use DOT4. That way I can run that in both sides. So if we're going to a race and you have 5, you can use it on this side. Can't use it over here, and if you have 3, you can't use it over here. So just carry 4 with you, and you can use it wherever you need to. So all we're gonna do now is we're gonna crack these screws loose. You can kind of tell that my fluid level is okay in here because this does have a sight glass, and you can see the fluid's at the top of it. Hard to tell with the GoPro. You can see the bubble maybe at the top. So fluid should be okay, but maybe we have a bubble at the bottom. It hasn't been leaking anywhere on the floor out front, so that's not the problem. So unlike the clutch side, this is way cleaner in there. The front brake fluid looks great. We just gotta bleed it out. So now that we got the cap removed, we can come down here. And this is our front caliper bleeder screw. It's behind this little cap here. We're just gonna pull that off and the little grommet, take it all the way off. And just like I did for the clutch, we're gonna slide this on first. And again, you wanna have it in a position so you can crack it open and close it. If you started with a wrench down here, you have nowhere to go because the brake line's in the way. So we'll keep this up here. And I didn't empty this out. We don't really need to because I can see if there's any air bubbles or dirty fluid in my original, in the big long hose here. So we'll just push this on, and then Braxton will grab the front brake here in a second for us. So what we're gonna do now is you hopefully can see our, so Braxton, go ahead and squeeze that front brake for me. He's got it pulled in, and we're gonna pull down on our bleeder screw. And look at all those air bubbles that just came out. We had a whole line of air bubbles. So I'm gonna shut this again. Okay, Braxton, go ahead and release that. And you released it. And let's just pump it once or twice here. Okay, it's already feeling harder. There was a bunch of air bubbles at the bottom. I'm gonna put quite a bit of fluid in this reservoir. This has to be about half empty whenever you're done, because you got a really tall cap that sits on top of here. If you fill this to the top when you're done, you squish your cap on, you're gonna get fluid going everywhere. But we're gonna fill it because we're gonna try to push that much more fluid out. So we'll fill this, and then we'll do this at least 4 or 5 more times or until the air bubbles stop. Fluid's getting back down. Oh yeah, our brake's already coming back. We're pretty much back to like a 1-finger brake in the top. I'd like to get it a little bit better, so we'll keep going. Make sure there's no more air bubbles in it. Sometimes you can also trap an air bubble in the line here, because this is actually higher than the reservoir. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll pull this line down as far as I can, kind of twist it out, and that would push, you know, highest point. That's where the air is going to go. So we'll kind of bend it down like this, rotate the handlebar, Braxton kind of feather that front brake, or if I just kind of squeeze it, just to kind of show people. Yeah, we'll just kind of do that a bunch. And then if some air bubbles are coming out, you would know that there's air bubbles in your line. I don't think that's our problem. I think ours were down lower. So we'll keep bleeding this at the bottom. Okay, so we kept bleeding this a few more times, and we'd get some more bubbles coming out, which is what we were looking for. And so now when you grab that front brake, it's right there. It's so cool. So I was able to show you guys in this video one that had a bubble issue, and then one that's had a really dirty fluid issue. One other thing that you could have wrong with your front brakes is if your brakes were soft and then hard again, or soft and then hard, you might have a bent rotor. That wasn't the case for mine, because I could keep squeezing it without spinning the wheel and it wasn't getting hard. But if your brakes got hard and then you would have rotated your wheel and then your brakes were soft again, when you have a bent rotor, the rotor will bend out in a certain spot, and that'll push the brake pad in. And whenever you need to re-grab that brake, you're squeezing, trying to get that pad to squeeze back into the rotor first before it does any kind of braking. So check for that too. If it gets hard before you spin it, and then you spin it and it's not, could be a bent rotor. But all we're gonna do now is wrap this video up. We'll put our cap back on the top, and then down here we're just gonna put our grommet back on top of the bleeder screw. If you guys found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to our channel. We would appreciate it. Thanks.